He was a man who could buy anything. He could buy companies. He could buy islands. He could buy time. Or at least, he could buy the time of every other person in the world. But he couldn't buy back the one thing he'd lost. This man, a billionaire who had built an empire from dust and numbers, was sitting in the back of his car, not on his way to a meeting, but in the parking lot of a small roadside diner. The car, a machine worth more than the diner itself, was embarrassingly silent. It had broken down. A cold winter rain hammered the roof. He was annoyed. He was late for a flight. He looked at his driver, who was on the phone looking panicked. "It will be an hour, sir." "At least," the driver said, his voice small. "An hour." The man sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He wasn't used to waiting. He wasn't used to this normal, broken-down world. "I'm getting a coffee," the man said, not waiting for a reply. He pulled up the collar of his expensive coat, stepped out into the rain, and pushed open the glass door of the diner. A small bell jingled. The place smelled of old coffee and fried food. It was warm. He felt out of place. He slid into a worn-out vinyl booth, his coat feeling too heavy. He pulled out his phone, ready to move millions of dollars, ready to reschedule his world. "Be right with you, hun," a voice called from the kitchen. He just nodded, not looking up. He was already lost in his emails. A shadow fell over his table. "Sorry about the wait." "What can I get for ... double quotes?" The man looked up from his phone to give his order, and the world stopped. The phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the table. His heart didn't just stop. It felt like it had been punched. Standing in front of him, holding a coffee pot and a notepad, was a ghost. It was his daughter. But ... it couldn't be. His daughter was on the other side of the world, studying in London. He had just spoken to her that very morning on a video call. She had been laughing, wrapped in her university scarf. This girl ... Waitress ... was not his daughter, and yet she was. She had the same eyes. Not just the same color, but the same shape, the same light in them. She had the same small mole just above her lip, the way a few strands of her hair fell. It was identical. It was his daughter, standing in a faded diner uniform, looking tired. So very tired. The waitress, a young woman in her early 20s, just like his daughter, looked confused. The man was staring, his mouth open, his face pale. "Sir?" she asked, her voice soft. Are you okay?" He couldn't speak. He just stared. He saw his late wife in that face. He saw his whole life in that face. And it was a face that had no business being here, serving coffee in a rundown diner. He finally found his voice, or a dry, cracked version of it. "I'm sorry," he managed. You look exactly like my daughter." The waitress gave a small, tired smile. It was a smile he'd never seen on his own daughter's face. His daughter's smile was bright, carefree. This girl's smile was worn down, but it was still there. "I must have one of those faces, I guess," she said, trying to be polite. "Just coffee." "Yes," he whispered. "Please." She poured the coffee. Her hand was steady, but he noticed her nails were short, no polish. Her hands were red and rough. His daughter's hands were always perfectly manicured. He watched the waitress move. She was graceful, but with an efficiency that spoke of long hours, of being on her feet all day. He sat there, the coffee untouched, for nearly 20 minutes. He just watched her. He watched her be kind to an elderly man in the next booth, calling him by his first name. He watched her handle a rude customer with a patience that he, the billionaire, knew he did not possess. He saw a deep, settled kindness in her. But he also saw a deep, settled sadness. A loneliness that he recognized because he felt it too. His mind was racing. Coincidences happen. But this wasn't a coincidence. This was ... an impossibility. His driver tapped on the diner window. A new car, sleek and black, had arrived. It was time to go. Time to get back to his world of numbers and schedules. The man stood up. He pulled out his wallet and took out all the cash he had. It was several $100s. He slid it under his coffee cup. He walked to the door, his mind a fog. He got into the new car. The leather was cold. "To the airport, sir?" the new driver asked. The man looked back through the diner window. He saw the waitress pick up the cup. He saw her eyes go wide at the money. He saw her look up, searching for him, her face a mix of shock and gratitude. And in that moment, he knew he couldn't leave. He couldn't get on a plane. He couldn't just fly away from this mystery. This felt like a message. A message from his late wife, perhaps. "Wait," he said to the driver. He got out of the car, ignoring the rain, and walked back into the diner. The waitress was standing by the table, holding the money in her hand, trembling. "Sir, I can't accept this," she said, her voice shaking. This is too much. "Please," he said, his voice gentle. I have to ask you a question, a very personal question, and I'm sorry. But I have to know." She looked at him, her eyes wide with confusion and a little bit of fear. He took a breath. He felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. "My name," he said, "is not important. But that girl you look like, my daughter, she's my entire world. And seeing you, I just have to know, were you adopted?" The color drained from the waitress's face. The small bell on the door jingled, but neither of them noticed. The diner, the rain, the world. It all faded away. The only thing that existed was the man's question, hanging in the air. The waitress's hand, the one holding the money, clenched. She didn't look angry. She looked seen. She looked up, and for the first time, he saw a tear form in her identical eyes. "How?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "How did you know?" The word hung in the air between them. How? The man felt his legs go weak. He had expected. He didn't know what he had expected. A denial? A strange look? He had not expected a confirmation. He stammered. It was just ... A guess. A crazy guess. The waitress clutched the money to her chest, as if it were a shield. The other people in the diner, the elderly man and the rude customer, were starting to stare. This rich man, in his soaking wet $1,000 coat, was holding this poor waitress in a conversation that was clearly not about coffee. "Please," the man said, his voice low and urgent. He looked around. "Not here. Can we just talk for 5 minutes, in my car? It's right outside." The waitress took a step back. Her mind was screaming, "Run. This is how bad things happen." A strange man, a car, promises. She had spent her whole life learning to spot danger, and a rich man acting this strangely was a red flag the size of a building. I have to work," she said, her voice small but firm. "My shift isn't over. I'll buy the diner," he said, the words tumbling out. "No, I'm sorry. I'm not thinking. Please, I need to show you something." He wasn't trying to scare her. He could see that he was. He fought to control his own shock. He had to be calm. He spoke slowly, as if talking to a frightened animal. "I won't hurt you, I promise. I need you to see why I asked." He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking so much he almost dropped it. He fumbled with the lock screen, his thumb slipping. "Just ... look," he said. He turned the screen to her. She looks happy, carefree, and identical to the waitress. The waitress froze. The coffee pot she was still holding tilted in her hand, but she didn't notice. It was her. It was her face, her eyes, her nose, her mouth, but it wasn't her life. The girl in the picture was wearing expensive sunglasses, her hair was perfect, and her smile. Her smile had never known a single day of hard work or worry. The waitress looked at her own reflection in the dark screen of the coffee machine nearby, her tired, pale face, the dark circles under her eyes. Who is that?" she whispered, the fight leaving her voice. That, the man said, his own voice thick with emotion, is my daughter. She's in London. She's 22 years old. The waitress slowly looked up from the phone, her eyes finally meeting his. The fear was still there, but now, underneath it, was a new fragile spark. Curiosity. A question she had held in her heart her entire life. I'm 22, she whispered. The man's heart stopped again. Please, he said, his voice begging. 5 minutes. She looked at her boss, who was watching from the kitchen, tapping his watch. She looked at the tables that needed clearing, and then she looked at the face on the phone. Her own face. She made a decision. She walked to the counter, untied her apron, and threw it down. Her boss shouted, "Hey! You walk out, you're fired." She didn't even look back. "I'm already fired," she muttered. She followed the man out into the rain. He rushed to open the car door for her, and she slid into the leather seat. It was warmer than her entire apartment. It smelled like nothing, just clean. The driver looked back, confused. "Sir?" "Just wait," the man said, climbing in the other side. He turned to face her. The car was a silent, private bubble, the rain drumming a soft rhythm on the roof. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Why?" "I'm sorry," he said. "You're right. I have no right to ask. You don't have to tell me anything. But you said you were adopted?" The girl nodded, looking down at her rough hands. "I done single quotes D. I don't know who I am. I was a foster kid. I moved around a lot. I aged out of the system at 18. That's it. That's my whole story." The man listened, and every simple, hard word she spoke was like a knife in his heart. His daughter, the girl on the phone, had known only safety, tutors, and affection. This girl, that girl who wore her face, had known nothing but the opposite. The people. The agency's will quotes, he began. "They never told you anything about your parents?" She let out a short, bitter laugh. "They said my mother was young and couldn't keep me. They said I was lucky to be healthy. They said a lot of things. You learn not to ask after a while. You just survive." He looked at her, truly looked at her. He saw the strength that his own daughter had never been forced to learn. "When?" he said, his voice barely a whisper. "When is your birthday?" She looked at him, confused by the question. "Why? Just humor me, please." She told him the date. The billionaire's world tilted. His blood went cold. He felt the air leave his lungs, as if he'd been punched in the stomach. It was the same day. October 14th. The exact same day as his daughter. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a 1 in a million chance. This was this was something else. This was impossible. "I got double quotes," he started. "My daughter, her birthday. It's October 14th. The waitress stared at him. For a moment, she thought he was lying, playing some kind of sick, cruel joke. But then she saw the look on his face. It wasn't just shock. It was horror. A dark, cold realization was dawning. He had been there. He remembered that day. His wife. His beautiful, wonderful wife, who had died 5 years ago. He remembered the birth. It had been difficult. The doctors had been rushing around. There had been complications. They had told him his wife was in danger. He had been so focused on her, so terrified of losing her. He looked at the girl. His mind was spinning, putting pieces together that he never knew existed. This wasn't an adoption. This was a separation. "They're twins," he whispered. The words felt strange, impossible. "You're twins." The waitress just shook her head, overwhelmed. "Twins? But how? Why would you keep one and give one away?" That's monstrous." The man's face hardened. The sadness was fading, replaced by a new, cold, burning anger. A kind of anger he hadn't felt in years. The kind of anger that had built his empire. "Exactly," he said, his voice a low growl. "That is a monstrous act." And it's not one I committed. He turned away from her and looked out the front windshield. His mind was clear now. This wasn't a ghost. This was a crime. He pulled out his phone. He didn't call his daughter. He didn't call his office. He called a number that he kept only for true emergencies. The waitress watched, her heart hammering. "I have a situation," the man said into the phone, his voice flat and dangerous. "I need my private investigation team. I need them to find everything on a hospital birth 22 years ago. And I need to know double quotes." He paused, looking at the identical face of the girl next to him. A girl who had lived a lifetime of suffering, while her sister had lived a lifetime of privilege. "I need to know who was on duty in my wife's delivery room, and who in my family had access to her." The man hung up the phone. The car was silent, except for the man's heavy breathing. "What's happening?" The girl whispered. She was no longer just confused. She was terrified. "What did you mean? Who had access?" The billionaire turned to her. His eyes, which had been so sharp and powerful, were now filled with a deep, crushing guilt. He looked broken. "I think," he said, his voice so quiet she could barely hear him, "I think someone in my family stole you." He couldn't take her back to the diner. He couldn't let her go back to a life that had been a lie. He made another call, and the driver took them to the nicest hotel in the city. He walked her to the penthouse suite, a room bigger than any house she had ever been in. She stood on the plush carpet, afraid to touch anything. Why are you doing this?" she asked. The man looked at her face, his daughter's face, but marked with a sadness and exhaustion that his other daughter had never known. 22 years ago, he said, his voice thick, "I was in a hospital. My wife she had just given birth. The doctors said. They said it was difficult, that my wife was in danger. I was so scared of losing her, I wasn't paying attention." He paused, a terrible memory surfacing. "My father was there. He took control. He handled everything. He told me, 'It's a girl, she's healthy. But your wife is very sick.' I was just so grateful. I never questioned anything." He looked at the girl. "I need to go. I need to go ask him a question. Will you wait here? Please, you're safe. I promise, for the first time in your life. You are completely safe." He left his most trusted security guard, a kind-looking man, outside her door. "She is not a prisoner," the man told his guard. "You are not here to keep her in. You are here to keep the rest of the world out." The girl was left alone in the giant, silent room. She walked to the window and looked down at the city lights. They looked so far away. The man didn't go to his office. He drove to a huge, dark, old money mansion, the house he grew up in. He walked in without knocking. He found his father, a cold, powerful old man, sitting in a dark study, reading a book. "You look awful," his father said, not looking up. The man stood in the doorway, the rain from his coat dripping onto the priceless rug. "I met someone today," he said, his voice shaking with a rage he had held down his entire life. "How nice for you," his father said. "She's a waitress. She's 22. And she looks exactly exactly like my daughter." The old man slowly put his book down. He looked at his son. His eyes were not sad. They were not guilty. They were annoyed. "So," the old man said, "the loose end. It's come back." The man felt the floor drop out from under him. You did it. You knew. I did what was necessary." His father's voice snapped, suddenly strong. "Your wife was weak. The doctors were panicked. They said she was bleeding out. And you were useless, crying in a corner. They brought out one baby, then they brought out another. The secret was out. A secret hidden for 22 years. It was a complication," the old man said, standing up. "Our family, our empire, it needs a single strong heir. Not a pair, not a split focus, Not a divided inheritance. It's messy. I saw the complication, and I fixed it. I paid the doctor. I had the second one removed, sent to the state. A clean break. I did it ... to protect this family. I did it. To protect you. The man stared at his father. Not as a son, but as a stranger. Protect me? He whispered. You ... You mutilated my family. My wife. She died 5 years ago. She died. Never knowing. You let her die with only half her heart. You let this girl ... live in hell. For what? For business? Yes, his father said, his face like stone. For business. The man turned, his heart a cold, heavy stone in his chest. You are not my father, he said. Not anymore. He walked out of the dark house and never looked back. He got in his car, his hands shaking so hard he couldn't drive. He wept. He wept for his wife. He wept for the girl in the hotel. He wept for the daughter in London who knew nothing. Then, he stopped crying. He picked up the phone. He called his daughter in London. Dad, her sleepy voice said. It's the middle of the night. I need you to get on the plane, he said, his voice breaking. The private one. I'm sending it for you, right now. What? Dad, what's wrong? She asked, suddenly awake. Just ... come home, he said. I found something. No. I found ... someone your mother would have wanted you to know. He went back to the hotel. The girl was asleep on the sofa, still in her diner uniform. She was afraid to even touch the bed. He knelt beside her, his heart aching. He gently touched her shoulder. She woke with a start, her eyes wide with fear. It's okay, he said softly. It's just me. I ... I have the truth. And it's terrible. But it's over. He told her everything. He told her about her mother and his father and the hospital. He told her she was not abandoned. She was stolen. The girl, the young woman, just sat there as a lifetime of questions were finally answered. And she cried. She cried for the mother she never knew and the life she never had. The man didn't try to hug her. He didn't feel he had the right. He just sat on the floor and he waited. The next day, he took her to a small, private airport. She was wearing a new coat he'd had bought for her. She was twisting her hands, nervous. What ... what if she hates me? The girl whispered. She won't, the man said. She has half your heart. She just doesn't know it yet. The plane landed. The door opened. The man's daughter, the London daughter, ran down the steps. Dad, what is going on? You scared me too. She stopped. She saw the girl. She saw ... her own face, her own eyes, her own hair, looking back at her. The London daughter looked at the girl, and then at her father. She saw the tears in his eyes. She saw the truth before he even said a word. The girl, the waitress ... who had been alone her entire life, stood trembling. The London daughter, the girl who had had everything, took one slow step forward, and then another. She walked right up to her, this ghost, this sister, and she ... she opened her arms. The two women, two halves of one whole, separated by a rich man's greed, finally ... finally ... held each other. The billionaire watched, his heart breaking and healing all at once. The secret was exposed. The lie was dead. And in the ruins, his family ... his real family, was finally, after 22 long years, together.